What is Lisk? A history and what's next. That's the presentation I have for you here tonight. As you know, as I told you, I've been named the U.S. Ambassador to Lisk project. So I got the fancy title under my name there. So what is Lisk? Lisk is a blockchain application platform that's based in JavaScript and Node.js. This is one of the most accessible programming languages in the entire world. And then there's more developers that will be able to understand the code of the blockchain than any other. And it's really bringing the power to even lesser developers. Some of these people that are just learning may be able to use this because the tools are going to be so robust. Next. So, a little bit of history about Lisk now. In January 2016, there was a problem to solve. And Max Kordek and Oliver Beddoes, the founders of Lisk, decided that they were going to basically launch a coin offering in order to collect the funding for the solution to that problem. Anyway, the problem was that entry into the blockchain development field is hard. There's not very many tools, it's difficult to, it's expensive to do, and it's time consuming. A development framework like Rails or Django for the blockchain would be an excellent thing, and so this is how the project started. So in February of March of 2016, they were able to raise 14,000 Bitcoins for this idea, this decentralized blockchain application platform. And that distributed 100 million Lisk, which are now in circulation and are live on the network. So as you can see, in May 16, the network actually did go live. Now we have over 1,000 nodes, 250,000 transactions, millions and millions in volume, and now 60 core releases to the protocol. So November, the official Lisk Foundation was established in Zug, Switzerland. They attempted to establish it first in Berlin in order to pioneer the blockchain nonprofit in Germany. They would have been the first. They did not succeed in time, and so they eventually did what most other blockchain projects have done, registered in Switzerland. So once the foundation was established, this allowed the funds to become available. And as you can see, since then, they have hired quite an extensive team of members from 12 different countries. Very diverse team here, all of them extremely talented. Most of these are full stack developers with the legal guy there on the left, but everyone else just about is working on the protocol day in and day out. So these are the most recent releases for Lisk. We had Lisk Nano, which is the light client that allows you to vote, send transactions, etc., without having to download an entire copy of the blockchain. Makes it simple. You can do this very quickly without that syncing process. And also Lisk Core 0.9. We haven't reached the first major version of Lisk yet. It's still a growing protocol, but we are very, very close to the 1.0 release. In July, Relevance, which is a strategic rebranding company, has been tasked with completely redesigning the strategic outlook and the release schedule of the project. And they haven't revealed everything they've done yet, but they're working now. So they're also working with a creative rebranding company, Takio Nani. They're also a very excellent and well-respected company in Germany, and we're waiting to see what's going to happen with that. It should be released very soon. They say they're going to release the rebranding in August, so you should expect new logo, new look, also user interfaces for the explorers, and the Lisk Nano may take changes, we don't know. So we're going to see that. Next slide. So in December of 2017, we'll have the pieces of the puzzle officially finished. We'll have Lisk 1.0, which is the foundation, the solid protocol, without any of the issues that they've been finally working through. And then, so you'll have three components of it. The blockchain database, which is based on PostgreSQL. The smart contracts backend, which will be based in Node.js. And the user interface front end, which would be more friendly JavaScript. And as it says here, the SDK will provide a complete package for developers to deploy their own blockchain apps without having to reinvent the wheel or reinvent their own blockchain. So here's a look at really the main advantage and the problem that Lisk solves that currencies in the past have not yet come to solve. So you see here at the top, we have Ethereum, and basically as the chain goes along, all of the financial transactions as well as the applications and the smart contracts are all stacked into one layer, the one main chain. Now, with Lisk, instead of convoluting the main chain with all of this smart contract data and applications, you run the application smart contracts on side chains. And they can communicate with the main chain, but if there is congestion or interruption with the main chain, it won't affect the service of these side chain apps. And this has been a problem for a few of the networks that are trying the same thing Lisk is doing recently. This is probably going to be the major advantage and probably also the major selling point that people see with Lisk right now. So into the future, the blockchain application platform will have the suite of tools for you to make the applications, and it will also have a full ICO suite. That means you'll be able to launch a token with zero knowledge. If you have an idea that works on a cryptocurrency and or an asset that you'd like to sell, you'll be able to launch your token on Lisk very simply without programming knowledge. It will also have a decentralized exchange. What that will allow is for you to trade on the blockchain between sidechain tokens and main chain tokens. So that will provide a great degree of freedom within the transactions. The blockchain application catalog is something you may have seen with some other cryptocurrencies. Like Ethereum, there's a list of the applications you can go see, really beautiful looking list. This is going to be built into the protocol, so you'll be able to see the sidechains that are registered. And last but not least, the interoperability with the network is sort of like what I was saying with the side chains will be able to communicate with the main chains. And so this is going to be an entire suite of tools for ICOs, software development, decentralized applications, just about anything you can imagine, smart contracts, etc. So I think that's it we have here for the update on Lisk. Does anybody have any questions about Lisk?
What's ICO stand for?
It's an initial coin offering. Many of the new coin projects are funded this way. Basically, they sell the entirety of their distribution for Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. And so, like for example, in the Lisk ICO, 14,000 Bitcoin were exchanged for 100 million Lisk. Anybody else?
You mentioned communication between the chain that you set up and the main chain, and just to confirm that includes speaking to the other side chains, like depending on how those are set up, of course? Or does it not?
Well, so the main chain will be able to communicate with side chains because the side chains will be registered to the main chain. But the nodes that are hosting, they'll be able to voluntarily host side chains. So it's up to you and or your node or that mine. Well, they're delegates in Lisk, and we'll get more into that. But the side chains and the main chain will be able to communicate. Yes.
Okay.
Does anybody have any Lisk? Does anybody own Lisk here?
Not yet.
Got a few in here. All right. Very nice. Very nice. Great. Well, we have two more incredible presentations for you. Probably better than mine. And so, if you'd like to have another drink real quick, we're going to go ahead and take about 5 minutes, and then we're going to have the next presentation. Thank you very much, everyone.
So, 5.
Exactly. We don't get a top line.
That's actually like why there's a lot of it. Okay, so two of these things, but I really don't feel like putting money into it right now. I don't set myself to pick a trend line or nearly that level. Why not?
I just need to figure it out. But
Yeah.
Give me one day.
Yeah.
The concept is actually pretty simple. It's a little tricky to realize a bunch of different operations with a number of different passwords.
Yeah, like setting up your own wallet and stuff.
So then I was but then I even sold it. I sold a portion of it to make sure I can get a real cash back. So,
Oh, nice. Yeah, that bounces out nicely down.
Make sure that's real. So do you have any secret business to that?
No, at the moment I'm really just kind of learning. I'm in learning. I work as a developer and I'm just looking down in different ways.
So you would make the blockchain apps that this was.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, some of the individuals, there's another guy in my office who's interested in it, so it's like the kind of the boss, and like some of our initial research, we have like the graphs of the value of all the cryptocurrencies. And they basically are just all like exponential growth graphs, where you see it starts low and it shoots right up, and it's like, hey, I can spot bubbles. Like, I'm not an economist, but I can recognize the trends. So yeah, so for now I'm really just interested in like, all right, what can we do to work with this to get ahead of the curve in terms of like actually developing applications and technology, and what's going to be the next step after just using it.
I had no idea what you were
No game specifically. Probably the next year or so. But I mean, how we work with JavaScript is that for a while, it's all kind of so you should see how exactly that plays out.
Cool. So you would actually make what blockchain metrics. I guess that's what you're trying to do is what is it doing? What can
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, we were talking to the guys in Cisco last week too. Like one use case is we still get like smart contractors for people with like solar panels for the house. It might not be so like, and then there's also the supply chain. I mean, you've got a smart trying to figure out, okay, what do we do that's not been done already that's out there, these kinds of things. Give me things, I get in there. Oh, well, yeah, we're not going to do
there's some share.
You can't have like
They can some stuff.
make it a, you can buy it.
I want to
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I know I've seen, I had no specific backstory of it very much, but there was one point where we started to see is it using blockchain or something? Check out what's actually really yeah, so like after my chest, I was like, oh, this is really kind of
Hello everyone, we're about to start the next presentation in just a second, so if you want to take a seat, make yourselves comfortable. All right, hope everyone's doing well today. My name is Matthew Chauvin. A little bit about myself. I was born on the West Bank. I've been living in New Orleans for almost 10 years now. I'm a social entrepreneur. I focus on businesses based on their social impact and their long-term sustainability as well as profitability. I've helped found and have been the financial manager and the assistant manager in several startups. And in 2012, a few years back, I was going to school at the University of New Orleans, and several of my peers who were considered themselves big into economics and whatnot, they were the first ones to teach me about currency. The fact that you could even have problems with currency, that there was even a history of currency. And the thing that they mainly told me, I'm sure you all heard a lot about it, is, oh, the Fed's bad, the Fed is evil, the US dollar, there's something wrong with it, it's broken. And I heard this over and over and over, and of course, they gave me a solution. Does anyone want to guess what that solution was?
Gold.
No, it was not. It was to vote for Ron Paul. And, well, we all see how that turned out. It didn't turn out very good. So after that happened, I decided that I wanted to find a different solution, or an alternative solution. And that's when I started doing research online. And I ended up coming across the Bitcoin white paper, written by Satoshi Nakamoto. And as I was reading it, it started to click with me. And then I went and read some information posted by Satoshi to various forums and mailing lists. And that helped put everything into perspective for me. It was at that moment that I realized that, hey, either I get on board with this and grow with this blockchain thing, or I'm going to sit back and hear about it the rest of my life, probably. And so I got on board, and since then I've helped mine, and I've assisted in mining operations for everything from Bitcoin to Dogecoin, from Litecoin to Vercoin, and a few coins in between, like Purecoin, Primecoin, various cryptocurrencies and such. But where we get to today is the primary function of cryptocurrency that got me involved, of course, is the currency aspect. So today, we're going to be talking about the value of currency. This may be some information that some of you are very familiar with, but it's very likely that you are all not as familiar with the financial history of currency, or even maybe what currency is. So for this meetup, we're going to be moving through a lot of the blockchain information. That's why everyone's been given a sheet. To go through it real quick, you have blockchains which contain blocks, which contain hashes of digital signatures using public and private keys, which are generated by wallets, which are mined using proof of work or proof of stake, consensus protocols over a distributed network of nodes. Everyone got that? Everyone? I'm sure it's okay. That's why we have the sheets here, so you can get caught up on it. So, we're going to move on, and I'm starting with, of course, gold. Because gold is one of the oldest forms of currency used by humans. Gold currency has been found as far back as 600 BC, and it's been used primarily because it's had a lot of intrinsic value. People have wanted it because it looks pretty. It was scarce. Nobles, they had it, so everyone else wanted it. And because it's a limited resource, it's been able to be a good source of currency for the longest time. But in recent history, society has begun to evolve, and we've started to need some more things. This is a meme. It is pretty much the opposite of gold when it comes to currency. It has very little value. You can replicate it, you can duplicate it. You can't even probably tell me if this is the original Doge meme or not. That is a primary problem with a lot of currencies, and of course, if you combine gold and a meme, I find that you would get, I know a few of you guessed it, Dogecoin. Now, why is Dogecoin important? Well, Dogecoin was really just a cryptocurrency that used a popular meme from 2013 as a marketing scheme. But this cryptocurrency, considered a joke by many, even several of the creators called themselves and referred to themselves as internet trolls, created this joke currency. But even this joke currency now has a value of $200 million. Now, money may be relative, but when the joke of something is worth more than 4 or 5 micronations GDP, you may want to start looking into it a little bit. These are the traits of money. Some of you may be familiar with them. I'm sure some of you have never even heard of them. The first 4 traits of money were created by Aristotle, and they were what Aristotle considered to be sound money. Your money must be divisible. You have to be able to divide it into parts easily. Your money must be portable. You have to be able to transport it easily. Durable, it needs to be able to last. You don't want your currency to disappear on you or rot on you. Intrinsic value, one of the most important. Aristotle said that all currency and all money should have a value to it other than what you say it's worth. If it was worth nothing to someone in trade, it should still have some use or value to you. As history went on, those 4 properties of sound money were good, but we needed to start developing more properties for money to meet our needs. And so you have fungible or interchangeable. Your currency needs to be exchanged for itself. You can exchange $1 for $1, but a chicken may not be worth a chicken. You might have a 10-pound chicken versus a 5-pound chicken, so they're not very interchangeable. Secure, you want to have counterfeit protection. Everyone's heard of the numerous scandals, and I'm sure old gold heists from banks, and even these days you have like LIBOR scandals and all kinds of large banks. You also want to have your currency be easily transacted. Now, this one kind of gets split up a little bit. Some people believe that easily transacted should be, oh, well, here's my money, give me my product. Other people also tie in if your product or if your currency is accepted easily, like the US dollar, accepted everywhere. You also need scarcity. As people began to invest in currency for long-term holding, it's very important that no one's going to find a bunch of your currency one day and you didn't think it was going to happen.
Like the US dollar?
Like the US dollar, exactly.
Oh,
Yes. A few new ones emerged recently with the birth of cryptocurrency, and that is your sovereign money. Sovereign means, can you access your money when you want? Decentralized means that, or is all of your money being sent through the same person or group? Do you have to rely on your bank, or can you rely on yourself and your neighbor to verify your funds? And of course, smart money, and I think this is the most important of all of them, is money that you're able to program for yourself. So we're going to start with gold, since gold has been used for thousands of years as a primary currency for humans. And as far as the visibility goes, it's low. I'm not sure if you've ever tried to cut a gold coin in half, but I'm sure it's not easy. Portability, obviously gold's moderate. You can carry gold around, but large sums of gold, not that great. Durability, obviously gold's not going to go anywhere or rot away in your vault. Intrinsic value, we've discussed that before. A lot of people find intrinsic value in gold. If you found a gold bar lying on the ground, I'm sure you'd pick it up. And of course, fungibility. An ounce of gold, regardless of the shape, is usually worth an ounce of gold. You also have security. Gold is usually pretty secure, but when you buy gold, let's say jewelry or something, you really don't know what value of that gold is unless you, do some experimentation or figure out a way to determine what the carat of gold is. Easily transacted, you can't really exchange gold very easily, and I'm sure no one in a grocery store is going to accept your gold bar. Scarcity, it's fairly scarce, but the problem with gold is we don't actually know how much gold there is. A problem throughout history and raw metals has been that when all of a sudden you find a new source of this metal, the markets can fluctuate greatly. And of course, sovereign, decentralized, and smart, all low. In comparison, we have fiat money. Decently divisible. You can break down change into 1 cent, 5 cents, but if you want a fraction of a cent, let's say that you were doing something online and maybe your business model is that you get millions of users. Well, a fraction of a cent may be good for you, but sadly for fiat money, you cannot do transactions in fractions of cents very easily. Portability, very high, especially with new digital money, bank accounts and all of that. Durability is moderate. Digital cash is pretty safe, but the average lifespan of a greenback is only 27 years. So if you're looking to hold money for longer than that, that might cause you some concerns. Intrinsic value, low. I'm sure everyone has heard of the classic Zimbabwe dollar and their $1 trillion notes, and the only word for it was wallpaper, using it as cloth. And ultimately, fiat currency is only worth the paper that it is and the value you say it is. If a government that backs a fiat currency collapses, then your fiat currency for that is suddenly worthless.
Venezuela.
Venezuela, yes, they're experiencing hyperinflation as well.
Thank you very much.
Fungibility, is it interchangeable? A $100 bill is a $100 bill, a Canadian dollar is a Canadian dollar. Secure, I would say moderate for this. Money is fairly secure, cash and all that, but when you get to a situation just in 2015 in the country of Moldova, they lost $1 billion in the middle of the night. The treasurer logged in, checked his accounts, $1 billion completely missing off the books. There's nothing they can do about it. Easily transactable, obviously the US dollar is the most highly transacted currency in the world. And of course scarcity, that's a big problem, is with the Federal Reserve. Not sure if anyone's familiar with that. They're
to, I think, the hundredths place, maybe the thousandths place. If you have 100 of these Digix tokens, you can actually send them to Digix and say, I want the gold. Pay some sort of fee for processing that, and you get the gold. So now you have a cryptographic asset. There is a little bit of trust. Obviously, we have to trust that this company exists. We have to trust that they have the gold. But assume that you have done due diligence and you do trust this company. You now have a cryptographic asset that can be traded on the blockchain, similar to Bitcoin. If I have Digix tokens and I want to send them to somebody in Japan, similar to how I can send Bitcoin to them almost instantly, I can send them Digix tokens. More interestingly, that trust example, if I don't want to put a cryptocurrency in the trust because they have proven to be extremely volatile assets so far, maybe I want to put gold in the trust. So I take that contract and instead of initializing it with Ether or Bitcoin or Lisk tokens, I put a gold-backed token. So now when they withdraw at the 18th birthday, they have something that they can trade. They can either trade it in for the actual gold, or there's a market for these tokens. They can buy and sell it as the price of gold. So these things become very interesting. We start layering them and having contracts and different assets interacting with each other. It's a good time to bring up the Dubai blockchain strategy. I like to bring this up because maybe it grounds it. I'm talking about some kind of like outlandish, crazy things that might happen in the future. Dubai is spending hundreds of millions of dollars on the Dubai blockchain strategy. They hope to have, the first pillar is government efficiency. They hope to have all of their government records on the blockchain by 2020. They're making an incredibly positive regulatory environment so they can build up their industry. And they're trying to be the model smart city that puts kind of blockchain first, and because of the efficiencies they're going to gain. They estimate in paper pushing alone, they're going to save $1.5 billion in savings. For example, if my insurance lived as an asset on a distributed blockchain and the DMV needed it, it's there. It's all on a distributed database that we all have access to. And so that time that I spent getting the stuff faxed and dealing with all the stuff at the DMV, that would hopefully be eliminated. The Prince of Dubai says that this is in an effort to, quote, make Dubai the happiest city on earth. Take it for what you will. Another interesting thing similar to this in scope is the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance. Check it out. I think there's about 150 companies and organizations that have joined. Most notably recently MasterCard, ING, JP Morgan, tons and tons of businesses. I think one of the state governments in India just joined. Everybody this is real, this is happening, it's accelerating, it's very exciting. So, we'll talk about identity. I talked about identity a little bit when we were talking about the trust. How I wanted to put my grandson's cryptographic identity into the reference in the contract. So the core of any blockchain platform is actually identity, which is public key cryptography. Public key cryptography is a cryptographic thing that exists on the internet. It's happening all the time. It happens when you see that HTTPS. It's involved with public key cryptography, where a user or organization has a public key. That is them. That is their mathematical representation of them. They can give that to anybody. It's a string. It's a long, essentially super long random number. That is someone's identity, and they have the private key related to their public key that no one else gets to know. That's their keys. That's their proof that they are their identity. With the private key, they can sign a message and prove to anybody that has the public key that they were that person. So only can I, with the private key, prove that I am that public key. So that's the core. When you hear a wallet on a blockchain, that is someone's public key. And if I'm the owner of that wallet, I have the private key. And so if I want to send Lisk tokens, I have my public key, I have your public key. I sign a message about my public key that's saying I'm sending value to your public key. So the core of it is identity. The core of it is this cryptographic identity. But more and more so, you're seeing some companies realize that if we're going to be doing sophisticated financial transactions or sophisticated contracts, or if this is going to be related to the title of your house, then we need to tie the public key cryptography to real-world identity. So you see companies like Uport that are trying to create standards on linking real-world identity with these public key cryptography. And in doing so, you open up a whole other layer of really interesting things that you can do. Dubai, for example, wants to issue their visas on the blockchain. So if I'm traveling to Dubai, I could take my public key that's linked to my real-world identity, enter into a contract, create the visa that specifies the time frame I want to be there. I show up to Dubai, I scan my phone that is linked to my public key that's linked to my real-world identity. That finds the visa, that's the contract, timestamps it that I've entered the country. Same thing happens when I exit. Kind of streamlines and starts bringing these more abstract contracts and things going on in the blockchain into the real world.
Does that mean no more passport stamps or what?
Yeah, ideally. Maybe you, okay. For a while, they'll probably still stamp it just to let you know. You can maybe stamp it yourself.
Right.
Okay, so the last thing that I want to talk about is the machine economy. Or that's really what blockchain enthusiasts have started calling a more sophisticated version of the Internet of Things. So we've all heard about the Internet of Things. We don't just have computers that are connected to the Internet. We don't just have phones that are connected to the Internet. All these devices are beginning to be connected to the Internet. The toaster, the thermostat, the car, the everything. The coffee machine, everything. So we interact with these devices. We read the temperature. We take our phone and change the temperature. So the devices also interact with each other. Usually they're not interacting directly with each other. They're signaling some server and then coming back and talking to the device. And that's cool. That's exciting. But what about when these devices start needing to interact with each other? And what if these devices are interacting with each other from different companies, different organizations, different individuals own these devices, and they're operating under different protocols, they're operating, and they're maybe doing more sophisticated financial things, these devices are entering into agreements with each other. How do we do that? We do that by putting it on the blockchain. These devices can become their own cryptographic identity. They can hold value, they can enter into contracts and agreements with each other in a trustless way, where I don't have to trust, or the drone that's doing a delivery doesn't have to trust that the package is going to pay them. They've entered into like the package that they're delivering is going to pay them. They can enter into a cryptographic financial contract on a blockchain in such a way that these devices can interact with each other in a trustless way. So I'll leave you with a maybe not so far off world that we might end up with. So say I own a drone. I own a delivery drone. The drone leaves for work in the morning. He scans the blockchain for open delivery contracts in a similar geolocation listing. Enters into an agreement with into a smart contract with the delivery. Flies to the pickup point. The contract specified the cryptographic identity, which could be scanned as a QR code on the package. Picks up the package, verifies that it's correct. The contract moves forward, not in the delivery phase. Flies to the geolocation represented at the end. Some sort of scanning at the end that again scans that the package is now at point B, from point A to point B. That signifies to the contract that the delivery is done. The funds are released to the drone. The drone has now made money. The drone does this a few more times and then notices on its energy monitor that it's running low on energy. So it scans the blockchain for energy for like a charging station that does not have anybody currently on it. Finds the nearest charging station, lands on the charging station, enters into a financial agreement, enters into a contract with the charging station, and now pays microtransactions to the charging station for every unit of energy transferred to the drone. The drone now is entered into another financial contract and is transferring value to somebody else's or some other entity. The drone continues to fly on, and I'm hanging out at my house. I'm like, oh, I made a bunch of money with my drone today. I'm going to go have a nice dinner. The drone, at that point at night, something's wrong with its motor. It flies to a service station, enters into a financial agreement to fix the service. It has its own funds because I didn't drain it entirely with my dinner. I pulled some of the funds out for dinner. But these objects and these machines, with the blockchain powering the agreements between these machines, the possibilities are kind of endless and incredibly exciting. Again, I'm Danny Ryan. This is my email. This is what I do. I'm a developer in the space, consultant. I do a lot of open source contribution as well. And apparently I speak about it. So, any questions?
Couple. You didn't mention Google as a centralized platform that we all rely, a lot of us rely on for email and so forth. Trustees, the people that are doing the trustee position today could possibly be consultants of those who don't know anything about trusts at all. So when we talk about this automation, we also are looking at the probability or likelihood of not having a whole lot of jobs left for us to actually do.
Absolutely.
Which could be a good thing, I guess, if all that gold that was mentioned in the previous just appeared, we can all get rich. And we don't actually need money, we just start doing things that we want to do or whatever. That's a whole other level of thought process. So the attorneys that would typically do a title search and verify and all of those, we just actually went through a property transaction, so we had to get a title search and we also had to pay for title insurance to make sure that we weren't going to get bombarded with some type of lien or whatever, which there was $25,000 lien on the property we bought, so so they actually had to settle that before, which it was going to happen anyway. I mean, if you own a piece of property and a bank owns the property because you haven't paid the loan off yet, then they actually have a lien on the property, so it's a very common thing. But nonetheless, that is a very interesting concept that we are going to be replacing with a blockchain, potentially all these job opportunities. But where can the jobs go as a result of not having that job anymore?
That's a great question. And I think blockchains are going to cause that. AI is going to cause that. There's going to be a lot of disruption. We're already, I think, seeing a lot of it without totally intending.
McDonald's is doing a lot of this.
But you're also seeing a lot of opportunity being generated. Like, for example, this automation has generated the sharing economy. Now you have people driving around with their phone, picking up people with the spare time and the spare gas they have to give you a ride, to give you a meal. So the sharing economy is emerging from these automated solutions. And yes, we are rapidly defeating the jobs, but also we're adding jobs through new opportunities to share what we have through the technology. Like, for example,
haphazard jobs, to be fair.
Yeah.
well, I mean,
Not actual labor
there are different opportunities. I mean, to judge the opportunity based on that is one thing, but I think you're starting to see, like, for example, in the future, when your car is automated enough, you may be able to go to your job, and then your car goes and drives and does Uber while you're at work for you. And then maybe, like, I mean, there's opportunities out of it. I think it is going to eliminate a lot of jobs. So
And I painted a rosy picture, and I'm very excited about the opportunities and things that are going to happen. But that's almost a whole other question. And like
It is.
but
What's Louisiana?
I was gonna say something, when you said haphazard pay, I mean, that's kind of true, but especially in the service industry in New Orleans right now, I have a lot of coworkers that have abandoned working in the kitchen for the whole summer to take on jobs like Uber Eats, internet,
so the automation
internet sharing and consultation. So like even though it is haphazard and it's not like a 9-to-5 job, like
Still better than
I know
the
people that
opposite.
are making
something.
more money off of these haphazard jobs than they're getting off of their real jobs.
we have had these fears in the past with industrialization.
The late 1700s.
Yeah.
Which
Which it generally I think worked out. Society changed. I think there were a lot of issues and it was tumultuous. This might be the same, or this might be something totally different. I kind of fall under, with AI and blockchains and all this automation, this might not parallel exactly the cultural and societal shifts that we've seen, but a lot of people argue that people found things to do.
Listen,
So,
I have a PhD. It's sitting in my shed. Okay, I've used it many times. But if I could find some automation to dig that hole, I'm going to use that because I don't actually physically want to dig the hole. But I think, well, what I guess my point was is that because there is this automation of eliminating a job or even an insurance, if you eliminate the insurance, that's money saved. But there's going to possibly be another job that is created because there's another opportunity that people don't understand trust. I don't understand trust like I need to. And I'm more and more understanding that I need to know trusts. We all need to know what trusts are. Our birth certificate is a trust. And so, so it's a very important. When I said the whole thing about the DMV that, travel instead, that was part of that. But anyway, I digress to Digix company. What is the lifetime of that company? And so we're entrusting that, that this company is going to be around long enough for my child to experience the smart contract that releases the gold to.
Absolutely. That is something that I think will, a company like that can only prove itself in existing for a long time. Right now, maybe that's something that I'm willing to maybe make a bet on who's going to win the Super Bowl next year with my buddy and put that into a smart contract and put some gold back behind it. But you're right, putting a gold backed asset that a company is supposed to exist in 50 years, that's a very risky move. And maybe some of these digital assets, that purely digital assets, might stabilize in such a way that I feel comfortable putting. But even that, only time will tell.
And I'd actually,
Go ahead, you're first.
Yeah, I kind of want to, because that's something I'd like to springboard off of some of the comments that you've been making, going to the concept of smart contracts. Because in particular, because it seems to me that one of the limitations you run into if you're moving a human intermediary is you have to get down to kind of very fundamental, trackable I mean, understandable by computer concepts.
Right.
Whereas, while they are expensive, and I'm neither going to defend nor support them here, like lawyers and trustees and so on do interact with legal concepts that often go into much grayer areas of that. And so that seems like that would be a limitation in terms of the application of a smart contract. And so that is basically my question, is that correct, or if I'm missing something fundamental?
Maybe if it is something a little grayer, you do specify the trustee. And the trustee is there to confirm.
Yeah.
But the trustee is not there to hold the finances. And so that probably would make the operation cost less. But you're right. That kind of opens up the can of worms of getting trustable or maybe trustless data about the real world into these contracts. Maybe the kid had to go to college to get the funds. How do we prove that to a contract? Maybe we do need an intermediary until the degree is a digital asset.
Yeah, so everything's integrated on some level or another.
So Nick Szabo talks about that. He wrote the
Who was that?
a guy called Nick Szabo.
Famous cryptographer and
Yeah.
analyst in the field.
And he has a blog called Unenumerated.
He's
I think,
brilliant,
which is
right, brilliant.
Which is really good. But he talks about this in the concept of dry code, which is computer code. So where you can put parameters around a contract, the computer can execute something. You need subjective judgments. You need people, and you can integrate that into the workflow. Right? And so he calls that wet code. He calls people, lawyers are kind of executing, in his mind, he has a legal training too. And in his mind, lawyers are kind of executing code, but just in a, he calls it wet code versus dry code.
Right.
And the smart contract's going to have to become
Right, and where there needs to be some sort of wet code interacting with it, that can be specified as their cryptographic identity. Some set of people are allowed to agree, or maybe 7 of 10 people must agree about something. And these people that are specified, they have to call a confirmation election.
What's the limit of the size of information you can attach to an Ethereum contract?
It is expensive to store data on the blockchain. Period. So storing values, say timestamps about when things can occur, storing values about cryptographic addresses, and storing code, you can get most of that into there. But if you're going to reference, say we're going to make a contract, or we're going to make some cryptographic asset that proves that I wrote this album at this time, so I'm going to use it as like a timestamp and proof that copyright. I would not put the entire album on the blockchain. I can actually do what's called a hash. I can mathematically hash the entire album in such a way that nobody can predict that. It's a deterministic function, but nobody can predict what the value would be prior to it. And in doing so, I can reference the hash in the contract. And so anybody that I give the album to, I can say, here, hash it, see, it's there. So you do have to find the balance between the complexities that you do put on-chain versus off-chain, and the things that are off-chain, how can you prove, like there are techniques and interesting mathematical ways to prove things off-chain with a little less information on-chain. But it's a good intuition, like I did an analysis of this, and it's, to put like a gigabyte of data on the blockchain costs like $100 million or something like that. Not that,
Nice.
and you'd have to do that super piecemeal because transactions can only be so big. But that intuition kind of makes sense. Like I shouldn't be able to put my HD movie set on a distributed ledger that nodes are running all over the world.
So would Lisk be like one of those side chains that would give you that?
Well, Lisk and Ethereum are two separate application platforms. Think of it as like, well, there's a number of ways to think about it, but how an app might be on the Google Play Store, but not on the Apple iOS Store. Or maybe I can build the app for both, because they're kind of separate ecosystems, so I may choose to have my contract on this one or that one. But the Lisk, you could potentially build a side chain in Lisk that took a lot more, that was like more data intensive, like would take bigger files. But you might see fewer of the nodes willing to run that because it would take so much space. But you might be able to create some sort of
for the sidechain nodes. So if, for example, that sidechain has a token and maybe it provides an incentive to host that code, the incentive and the mechanism is a little different there. But ultimately, the nodes are going to voluntarily host any code, and so you'll choose which chain you'd like to host, and those applications will have their own consensus algorithm. So, for example, you could secure a Lisk sidechain with the Bitcoin network, or you could use delegates like the Lisk network already uses, or you could secure it with something like proof of stake, which is basically one coin is one vote for power in the network. There's a number of ways it can be done, but the modularization of Lisk is the scaling solution that's been proposed, and that's Ethereum has a scaling solution also. They call it sharding. It's coming, but Ethereum is more of a sort of like a single-threaded engine, or like it's basically one big machine, and it operates everything that's ever been executed on it. Whereas, like I said, Lisk, you can voluntarily host the sidechain. So.
And in terms of data storage, people are actually using blockchains to orchestrate distributed data storage. So again, we can make cryptographic references to the data and kind of references to who has the data, and then have a network and incentivize the network of people storing like a distributed cloud.
Kind of like Napster?
In a way, you can create a distributed network like BitTorrent.
Napster's back?
Oh yeah.
What do you want to say, buddy?
Yeah, this is kind of going off. So, and this is going off of decentralized apps, kind of under your stuff about Lisk and the side blockchains. It would seem that creating a side blockchain would have the counter effect that it would actually be more easily manipulable than to corner than the primary blockchain, right?
Right, but that's not necessarily a disadvantage, because if you look at what's happened to contracts and applications on a single blockchain in the past, in order to fix them, they had to reboot the entire chain.
Yeah.
Like the DAO. I don't know if you've heard of DAO, but Ethereum, in order to fix that $150 million hack, they had to reboot the entire chain. Whereas if this was a side chain, you'd only have to reboot the side chain. So yeah, there's a greater degree of control, and that's why enterprise might in fact like it, because they will be able to get as much control as they want over the chain, and then you can still use a completely decentralized method if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, I guess fundamentally that would involve you having to really kind of keep an eye on like who the players on that blockchain network were, so that you could maintain
use the delegates that secure the Lisk network. Basically, if you provided an incentive on your sidechain, such as a token, which is most of these applications are going to be based on some sort of token, that's the incentive to participate. But if there is that incentive, the delegates that normally secure the Lisk network will also want to secure these chains, and so it'll have roughly the same amount of security as Lisk chain. But those delegates will voluntarily host that node, host that chain or not.
And we're currently experimenting with many different ways to do these things. We, like with Ethereum, with Lisk, with a chain called Tezos that's planning on launching, there's different approaches. We can do things in a decentralized and distributed way, but we can do it a bunch of different ways. And so you haven't really seen, the market is kind of picking certain players and building on them, but it's a very developing field. And Lisk might turn out to be great for certain types of applications because of the separation, and Ethereum might turn out to be great for certain types of applications. And scaling these chains and figuring out how to do things on a global scale and handling thousands and thousands of transactions a second, it's still an open question.
Right.
We're still figuring out.
The last thing I wanted to say there is that most of these projects that you're seeing, these contracts that are being deployed, these decentralized applications, they're still a proof of concept. You ask the developers, they'll tell you they're a work in progress. And yet, the potential of these platforms has made people so excited that they are rushing in with their money to buy any of these assets just to get a piece of this thing. So, yeah, is it production ready? Probably not.
Kind of almost.
Are people using it like it's production ready? Yes. So
The right word sounds like speculative.
So, I mean, basically what I'm trying to say is, do your research and don't jump headfirst into anything in terms of an investment. You know what I mean? Always do your due diligence there.
Yeah, this one's for you. Talking about all the ICOs and all that stuff. So, what is your take on the recent SEC decision that ICOs are going to be treated as securities?
So, I'm not a lawyer, I don't give investment advice, all that kind of stuff. So they said the DAO was in fact a security. They also in the memo said a lot of these things are probably securities. They did not say every ICO is a security. So that's important to note. The DAO definitely was a security. It was essentially shares in a company, you got to vote on things, and if they made money, you made money.
And they chose the direction of the investments. The DAO chose the direction of the investments, and therefore you had a security.
It was definitely a
You had
security.
So should U.S. users be cautious when purchasing into ICOs released on a chain in the future?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You can do most of these things, I will say, without linking your real-world identity. So use your judgment. But I cannot advise. If someone says you're not allowed to do it in the U.S., I have to say you probably shouldn't do it. But you can.
Keep it legal.
For the idea of like a metaphor, I like that I've heard before, I don't know if you said it, Ethereum can be thought of as one world computer. Everyone's got a terminal, helps the processing, but essentially people don't have